Have you ever looked at a British car from the 1980s and thought, that's supposed to be a muscle car? Well, you're not alone. While America was churning out Mustangs and Camaros and the rest of Europe was perfecting the art of the hot hatch, Britain decided to take a different approach, one that involved equal parts ambition, madness, and a healthy disregard for conventional wisdom. Today we're exploring every British muscle car of the 1980s. These are the machines that prove when British engineers decided to stuff enormous engines into slightly questionable chassis. Magic happened. From fire-breathing V8s wrapped in aristocratic bodywork to supercharged 6 cylinders that rewrote the rulebook, these beasts represent a golden era when Britain said, let's show them how it's done. So buckle up and hit that subscribe button, because we're about to take a tire-smoking journey through the most bonkers, brilliant, and brutally fast British machines ever to terrorize the Queen's highways. The Aston Martin V8 Vantage. Let's kick things off with automotive royalty. The Aston Martin V8 Vantage wasn't just fast, it was biblically quick. When it launched in 1977 and continued dominating through the 1980s, magazines called it Britain's first supercar. Under that elegant, hand-built bonnet sat a 5.3-liter V8, producing around 400 horsepower, though Aston Martin, in typical British fashion, refused to confirm the exact figures. They simply said it was adequate. Adequate like a sledgehammer is adequate for cracking a walnut. With a top speed of 170 miles per hour, it was the fastest production car in the world when it debuted. The Vantage featured wider wheel arches, a blanked-off grille, and a ducktail spoiler that announced its intentions before you even heard that glorious V8 rumble to life. Inside, it was all Connolly leather and walnut veneer. A gentleman's club doing 160 miles per hour. This wasn't just a muscle car. It was a statement that Britain could build something to embarrass the Italians and terrify the Germans. The Jaguar XJS HEV12. Next up is the controversial cat. The Jaguar XJS divided opinion like no other car in the 1980s. Some called it beautiful, others said it looked like someone sat on an E-Type. But nobody, and I mean nobody, questioned what happened when you pressed the accelerator. Beneath that long, swooping bonnet lived Jaguar's legendary 5.3-liter V12 engine. In high-efficiency form introduced in 1981, you could be doing 150 miles per hour and still carry on a conversation at normal volume while sipping tea from bone china. Well, maybe not the tea part, but you get the idea. The V12's soundtrack was pure symphony, 12 cylinders singing in perfect harmony, a mechanical masterpiece that proved British engineering could compete with anything Maranello produced. Sure, it drank fuel like a sailor on shore leave, but when you're piloting 300 horses wrapped in Jaguar luxury, economy becomes delightfully irrelevant. Now we're getting into proper lunatic territory. TVR, the Blackpool-based manufacturer that made cars for people who thought safety regulations were suggestions, delivered 2 absolute weapons in the 1980s. The 350i arrived first, featuring a 3.5-liter Rover V8, producing around 190 horsepower in a car that weighed about as much as a bag of crisps. Well, slightly more, but at just 1,000 kilograms, it was featherweight. The result? A power-to-weight ratio that embarrassed far more expensive machinery. Then TVR said, let's add more madness, and created the 390 SE. This beast packed a 3.9-liter version of the same V8 with 275 horsepower. No traction control, no ABS, no computers telling you what to do. Just you, a lumpy V8, and a prayer. The interior was pure 1980s excess. More leather than a biker convention and a dashboard that looked like it belonged in a private jet. These cars demanded respect and talent in equal measure. They'd bite you if you weren't paying attention, but master them, and you'd experienced driving in its purest, most terrifying form. TVR proved you didn't need a massive budget or German precision, just a willingness to go properly, gloriously mad. The Lotus Esprit Turbo. Pop quiz. What car did James Bond drive in The Spy Who Loved Me? If you said Lotus Esprit, you're absolutely right. But the naturally aspirated version, while pretty, wasn't exactly setting pants on fire. Then Lotus strapped a turbocharger to its 2.2-liter four-cylinder engine, and everything changed. The Esprit Turbo arrived in 1980, producing 210 horsepower, modest by today's standards, but remember, this was fitted to a car with the aerodynamic efficiency of a fighter jet and the weight of a shopping trolley. The wedge-shaped design, penned by Giorgetto Giugiaro, looked like it was doing 150 miles per hour standing still. Behind the driver sat that turbocharged engine, creating a characteristic lag followed by an absolute explosion of acceleration that pinned you to the seats. The handling was telepathic. Colin Chapman's genius for chassis dynamics meant the Esprit could embarrass Ferraris through the corners while looking impossibly cool doing it. Later versions, including the 1987 Esprit Turbo HC with 215 horsepower, refined the formula further. This wasn't just a muscle car. It was a precision instrument wrapped in origami bodywork, proving that British engineering could deliver supercar performance without the Italian price tag or drama. The Panther Solo. Here's a car most people have forgotten, which is criminal because the Panther Solo was absolutely bonkers. Imagine someone decided to create a mid-engine sports car using a turbocharged Ford Cosworth engine and wrapped it in bodywork that looked like science fiction. That's the Solo. Launched in 1984, it featured a 2.0-liter turbocharged inline-4, producing around 200 horsepower. Again, modest numbers until you consider the car weighed next to nothing and featured four-wheel drive, which was revolutionary for a car of this type in the mid-1980s. The Solo looked like nothing else on the road with its angular body, pop-up headlights, and aggressive stance. Only 26 were ever built, making it rarer than most supercars. The four-wheel drive system meant it could deploy its power more effectively than rear-drive rivals, and the turbocharged Cosworth engine delivered that characteristic whoosh and surge that defined 1980s performance. Sadly, Panther's financial troubles meant the Solo never achieved the success it deserved. Today, it's a forgotten hero, a brilliant concept, executed with typical British ingenuity but cursed by timing and circumstance. Finding one now is like discovering buried treasure, and values reflect that rarity. The Bristol Viewfighter. Bristol cars operated in their own parallel universe. While other manufacturers worried about mass production and economies of scale, Bristol hand-built exclusive machines for discerning gentlemen who appreciated quality over quantity. The Viewfighter, produced from 1980 to 1993, epitomized this philosophy. Under its elegant, hand-formed aluminum body sat a Chrysler-sourced 5.9-liter V8 producing around 250 horsepower. But Bristol wasn't about raw numbers, it was about refinement, build quality, and the sort of attention to detail that makes Swiss watchmakers look careless. Each Viewfighter was essentially bespoke, tailored to the customer's exact specifications. The interior featured the finest leather, deep pile carpets, and wood that came from trees older than most countries. Performance was brisk, 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 7 seconds and a top speed north of 140 mph. But delivered with such smoothness and refinement, you felt like royalty. Bristol owners didn't show off, they didn't need to. They knew they were driving something special, something built properly, something that would still be running flawlessly decades later when mass-produced rivals had dissolved into rust. The Viewfighter represented British muscle wrapped in aristocratic elegance, power with a dinner jacket. The Lister Jaguar Le Mans. When you take a Jaguar XJS and hand it to a racing company with decades of motorsport experience, magical things happen. Lister Engineering did exactly that, creating the Le Mans in 1987. They took Jaguar's already potent V12, bored it out to 7.0 liters, added better breathing, more aggressive camshafts, and extracted somewhere between 450 to 500 horsepower, depending on specification. The result was nothing short of savage. The Le Mans retained the XJS body but added wider wheel arches, aggressive aerodynamic aids, and an interior that mixed luxury with motorsport functionality. This wasn't a car for the faint-hearted, it was a barely civilized race car with number plates. The performance was staggering for its time. 0 to 60 miles per hour took around 4.5 seconds, and top speed exceeded 200 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest cars in the world. The V12's howl at full chat was otherworldly. 12 cylinders screaming with racing-bred fury. Only a handful were built, and each one was effectively handmade. The Le Mans proved that British tuning houses could create machines to rival anything from Germany or Italy, delivering supercar performance wrapped in British luxury. The AC Makeda 4. AC Cars, the company behind the legendary Cobra, decided the 1980s needed a proper British muscle car. The MK4 arrived in 1983 and it meant business. Based on AC's 3000 ME platform but significantly revised, the MK4 featured a 5.0-liter Ford V8 producing around 225 horsepower in a lightweight body. This was old-school British engineering, a big engine, rear-wheel drive, minimal electronic interference, and absolutely no apologies. The MK4 looked properly aggressive with its wide stance, flared wheel arches, and purposeful proportions. Inside, it was all business, supportive seats, clear instruments, and everything you needed, nothing you didn't. Performance was impressive. 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 6 seconds and a top speed around 140 miles per hour. The V8 delivered that characteristic American muscle rumble, but the British chassis gave it handling that Detroit iron couldn't match. It wasn't perfect. Build quality varied and reliability could be questionable. But when it worked, the MK4 was sensational. It represented a bridge between AC's Cobra heritage and modern performance, proving the company could still build cars that got your heart racing. The Ginetta G32. Ginetta, another small British manufacturer with racing DNA, created the G32 in 1989. This was grassroots British muscle, affordable, effective, and properly quick. The G32 featured a mid-mounted Ford V6, producing around 150 horsepower in standard form, but tuned examples could extract over 200 horsepower. The body was lightweight fiberglass and the whole package weighed around 800 kilograms. Do the math and you've got a power-to-weight ratio that embarrassed far more expensive machinery. The G32 looked the business, low, wide, and purposeful, with pop-up headlights and aggressive proportions. It was designed primarily for racing and track days, but road-legal versions existed for those brave enough to use one daily. The handling was razor-sharp thanks to double wishbone suspension all around, and a 50/50 its weight distribution. The V6's raspy exhaust note announced your arrival, and the acceleration was properly startling. This wasn't luxury or refinement. It was pure, undiluted driving pleasure delivered with typical British engineering ingenuity. The G32 proved you didn't need a fortune to experience genuine performance. You just needed a Ginetta. The Rover Vitesse. Let's end with something slightly different but no less significant. The Rover SD1. Vitesse might not look like a muscle car in the traditional sense. It was a four-door sedan after all. But what sat under the bonnet made it very special indeed. Rover took their elegant SD1 executive saloon and shoehorned in a 3.5-liter V8 producing 190 horsepower. Later versions received fuel injection, boosting power to around 200 horsepower. This was a wolf in sheep's clothing, sophisticated British luxury with American muscle hiding underneath. The Vitesse dominated the British Touring Car Championship throughout the 1980s, proving its performance credentials. On the road, it delivered a unique combination. You could carry 4 adults in comfort, cruise silently on the motorway, then unleash that V8 and embarrass hot hatches at traffic lights. The exhaust note was glorious. The performance was genuinely quick, 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 7 seconds. And the handling, while not sports car sharp, was surprisingly competent. The Vitesse represented British pragmatism. Why choose between performance and practicality when you could have both? It proved muscle cars didn't need 2 doors and impractical seating positions. Sometimes the best sleeper is the one nobody suspects. The 1980s represented a unique moment in British automotive history. These weren't muscle cars in the American sense. There were no massive V8s and pony cars, no quarter-mile drag strip heroes. Instead, Britain delivered its own interpretation. Sophisticated engineering, elegant design, and performance that could humble rivals costing twice as much. Some were hand-built in tiny workshops, others came from established manufacturers, pushing boundaries. All shared one thing. They were properly, gloriously fast. These machines proved British engineering could compete on the world stage. They might have leaked oil, the electrics might have been temperamental, and build quality could be questionable, but when everything worked, they were magnificent. They represented ambition, innovation, and a refusal to simply copy what others were doing. Today, these cars are increasingly valuable. Collectors recognize their significance, and prices reflect their rarity and performance. But more importantly, they represent an era when British manufacturers weren't afraid to be bold, to take risks, to build cars that stirred emotions rather than simply transporting people. So, there you have it. Every significant British muscle car of the 1980s. From Aston Martin's aristocratic bruisers to TVR's barely civilized weapons, from Lotus's turbocharged precision instruments to Bristol's handcrafted masterpieces, Britain delivered performance its own way. These weren't just fast cars. They were statements of intent, proof that British engineering could deliver the goods when ambition met talent. And that's something worth celebrating. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and thanks for watching.